Welcome back to SwitchCorner. Today we're taking a look at Fairy Tail on the Nintendo Switch. If there's one thing we do not struggle for on the console, I think it's fair to say it's a solid collection of AAA RPGs. So how does this one stack up, and can it do enough to earn your cash and just stand alongside the greats? Well, hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here, join our growing family, and let's get started. So a quick warning here, I've never seen the anime, so if you're looking for someone who can make like a big in-depth comparison to it and how it holds up, this is not the video for you, or at least my story breakdown won't be. Gameplay, graphics, frame rate, which is getting its own section to itself in today's video, and audio, that should give you a solid idea of what you can expect, but just kind of bear with me while I do my best here to try to explain what the hell is going on. So for the uninitiated like myself, the Fairy Tail game, it kicks off from episode 123 of the anime roughly. So that's right, we've got 122 episodes of missing information, which is always an intimidating prospect. Starting with a clearly important battle though against a character by the name of Hades, a dark mage of sorts, things go wrong quickly and we basically find ourselves in a magical defensive formation, protecting ourselves from a dragon that's about to kick our asses. This though actually results in what's known as a time skip. Basically, to put it simple here, while minutes pass for our band of heroes who are in this protective bubble of sorts, if you will, 7 real years have passed for everyone else in the real world around them. Now coming back to the real world though, shall we say our guild known as Fairy Tail has all but been forgotten, and we must now work to establish our name again as the #1 guild, get our lives back to normal and tackle all manner of enemies and story arcs. My big issue with Fairy Tail as a newcomer, it does very little to gently bring you into the fold, bring you up to date. No pre-movie, no recap text, just throws you in, says good luck and tells you to work it out for yourself. With that though, I will say, at least thanks to the time skip, I will say it's a good place to start because it gives the game an opportunity to reintroduce characters. I couldn't help but feel though a smaller, pre-cut scene or just a bit of extra text would have definitely helped open this one up to a much wider audience. Thankfully though, with Fairy Tail, the cast is definitely likeable, and once I started to, figure out the general gist of this world and did a little Googling of my own to try and answer some questions, I did start to enjoy it, even if I didn't have a clue about past relationships and actions that are clearly referenced. It got me curious though, and for fans it no doubt will give some subtle callbacks to past episodes while covering the Tenro Island arc, the Grand Magic Games arc, and the Tartarus arc, to name a few. Overall, Fairy Tail, it's fun enough stuff in its storytelling, but it definitely lacks any setup for those that haven't seen the anime. One thing I was really surprised at as well was the level of fan service. It's not particularly offensive, but the game definitely uses literally any excuse to, get them in a bikini, or even the clothing itself is barely describable as clothing. Look, if you like the anime, I'm sure you'll enjoy this. Everyone else, I wouldn't come here looking for anything deep, but there's definitely some entertaining characters in here. So gameplay, and this is an interesting one to say the least. Let's start with combat, as that pretty much makes up the bulk of the gameplay, and it's a unique system, that's for sure. While we do of course get standard attacks, you will rarely use them, unlike most turn-based RPGs. The big focus here is definitely on magic as per the Fairy Tail anime, and that's pretty much your go-to action for 90% of these battles. This will fit along then defense and items. Now while it may look like a traditional turn-based system initially, it all works on a grid system, and you'll essentially get different attack patterns displayed for our different moves. Think like Tetris pieces, and it's part choosing your foe to deal damage to, part matching that shape to fit the battlefield and almost impact as many enemies as possible. I really like this though, and the game does a good job of ramping things up pretty quickly. First though, you'll start with a basic move set, but before you know it, you're going to be able to chain attacks together, counter-strike, unleash team combos, and even activate what is known as awakenings, which basically transform you essentially from being a badass to being a total badass. These eventually then even open up to Unison Raids, which basically allow two characters in this state to combine their efforts. All of these attacks and battles then are closely linked of course to monitoring your health and tracking your magic points. Attacks then also have different attributes, resulting in potential impacts to our enemies, say pushing them back a space or maybe sending them to let's say sleep. The combat overall, gotta say, was extremely satisfying, with some of the blows landed being truly devastating. The game has a really nice way of flashing up huge scores on screen, and there's something simple yet extremely rewarding about seeing a total damage bar reading hundreds of thousands. That said though, it's definitely not perfect either. Here's my two big problems. First, while the team combos known as link attacks and counters are a cool idea, they result in nothing more than basically quick time offense, and you'll quickly realize that nearly every time it's the A button, so just kind of mash it between every cutscene. Then the viewpoint for these battles when you're selecting a move is questionable. It focuses on the next member up, so whoever your teammate is. And while I do appreciate the character models, they're very nice, it makes it very difficult to work out what attack pattern to choose because you can't see enemy placement. And after every attack they can shift, so I'd have to select an attack so I could see the formation, back out, and then go ahead and select the actual move I wanted. It's a silly thing, but a really weird design decision that I just couldn't quite get my head around. We get it, it's a fairy tale game, we don't need to stare at the characters to know that. Now when it comes to exploration, then this is the really weird piece of fairy tale, because there's very little actual exploration. The game, instead of having a huge open world, has small towns and locations that you kind of jump between to visit. The travel is instant. Both a positive and a negative, and it really depends on what you're looking for from an RPG experience. Because on one hand, for Fairy Tail, this means it's very quick in its pace. You get a mission and you'll be at your destination in moments. But I couldn't help but feel I was missing out on this truly stunning open world to explore. From nearly the second you set foot in this world, you'll have access to fast travel, and the game never really gives you a reason not to use it. This is basically how gameplay goes with this one. Get a mission either from a character or the jobs board at your base, fast travel to the needed location, take maybe 5 to 10 steps to the target, battle it out, win the fight, a pop-up comes on screen, do you want to return to the home base? Click yes, congratulations, here's some cash and a few items, now choose that next job and repeat. The fast travel is great for pacing, as I said, there's no question about that, but it takes away a lot of the wonder I'm so used to with exploring in an RPG world. I'm sure fans of Fairy Tail will miss that as well. I will be fair though and say, look, some of the missions are great, and I really enjoyed especially the bigger story arcs that took multiple steps to get through, but I can't deny a good 90% of these are basically just fetch quest after fetch quest, except instead of fetching, you're fighting. Don't get me wrong, you can of course explore these locations should you choose to, but my question for you is really why? There's maybe a few NPCs scattered around with a few minor quests to add to, the last fetch quest you did, but for the most part these are just barren landscapes with nothing more than a couple of enemies wandering around them to battle it out with, who half the time don't even attack you. The only time I really explored honestly was in a horrible circumstances when the game puts a forced stop on your progression. Just to give you an example, the game will ask you to basically hit a certain gold level or a certain strength before you can continue. I had to reach level 50 to continue in a tournament that I was already taking part in. To me, with an RPG, it shouldn't be a forced grind. It should basically give you an enemy that's too tough to beat, and then you'll make that choice yourself to go and level up. This felt to be honest, like an artificial block just to extend the runtime of the game, and I did not like that at all. Even that exploration as well, honestly, it basically came down to find the nearest thing I could fight and repeat it as many times as possible, as quickly as possible. There's a great cast in here, but there's very little around them to actually do. Fairy Tail's biggest fault though is its reliance on the same mission type over and over again. Basically go defeat something and come back home. And that's annoying because there were so many moments here that I wanted to take control of the players. At the beginning there was a moment with a labyrinth we were navigating through and we had to fight our way through. The game turned this into a single fight, and then the next cutscene was me walking out. If there was ever a perfect moment for a dungeon, that is it right there. And there was a lot of moments like this where I was begging for the game to just give me control. There is also a third mission type that I haven't mentioned yet though, quickly, and this one is character arcs. Basically you talk to a character and it's going to create a bond, a friendship, and these result in more of the same. Go somewhere, fight something, return. Wish I could say there was more to it, but there really isn't. The rest of the gameplay then really comes down to upgrading your base for various perks like an item shop, a research-like facility that provides items to equip. They basically give the player perks and extra attack points, and then even changing out the job board just to give you a few more options. It's a small touch, but I gotta say I actually kind of enjoyed the almost base building aspect of the game, even if it did often rely of course on fetch quests. Overall, I didn't find Fairy Tail too difficult as experiences go. It's relatively easy in the realm of JRPGs, and it was rare I actually found a battle that truly challenged me. Fortunately though, Fairy Tail does include different difficulty options to play with. There's a good game in here too, I can't deny that, but I also can't help but feel that they forgot to add any real variety and almost dumb down the RPG formula a little bit too much. You know, make me earn my fast travel, show me this world, force me to explore, and then fill it with interesting things that I want to see. The cast is by far the best bit of Fairy Tail, as are the main arcs, but it struggles to add anything of real interest outside of these few moments. Fairy Tail for me, as a big RPG fan myself, is one of those experiences that shows you all of these very cool moments and battles, but rarely lets you actually take control in them, and it just left me honestly feeling a little underwhelmed. Thankfully though, the combat system here, I will say, is really fun, and that's a good thing, because as I said, this game's going to be asking you to do a whole heap of it. I just couldn't help but wish for more around it. So graphically speaking then, we have very much a mixed bag. Character models I loved, and having a combination of 2D elements for text portrait images, and then these 3D models really does work. They take on an almost cel shaded style that is really appealing. Each comes in with a ton of animation though, and there's some really great facial expressions that have been torn straight from the manga. Much like the gameplay though, the world itself is a little hit or miss. While you may occasionally get a glimpse of a stunning vista ahead of you, you quickly realise it's gonna be out of reach and you'll never be able to visit it, and what you're basically left with is maybe a few enemies wandering around empty plains, think a dirt or a forested area. It's not that they look bad, and they are no doubt all ripped directly from the show, but they are all extremely small and largely repetitive. Even the enemies, they just kind of repeat so frequently, relying on adding maybe one or two new ones every so often, and then trying to pull that trick of, look, we changed the colour so now it's a different enemy. It doesn't count. Textures then as well, and they go a little all over the shop. Some, I've got to say, they look fine and crisp. Others, like the pavement below your feet, it's a very low quality image where blur is apparent. I'd say it's kind of 50-50 on the texture front, this one. Where Fairy Tail though absolutely crushes it though on the visual front is the cutscenes and the battle animations. These things are nothing short of epic and animated to an extremely high level. I looked forward to every single attack move and every single cutscene, whether it was just to see something nice and flashy, or whether it was digging into the relationships and the character arcs. It's exceptional work. Literally, I've got to say, because of these, I do have every intention of starting to watch the anime, and it sounds like I have a whole lot to catch up on. Graphically, outside of this then, the game has a few options to mix things up as well, they'll move your base location, you get outfits including the classic fan service bikini options, you can even switch your squad member as you're running around town. Sadly, even these moments though are not perfect, because I couldn't help but notice around the 10-hour mark, the once animated cutscenes and dialogue was slowly transforming into a 70-30 split, where yes, 70% was animated, but 30% was kind of just still images. Overall, visually largely empty locations with very little in the way of creativity is rescued by fantastic character models and some exceptional cutscenes that no doubt will impress the fans. Framerate now, and today this gets its whole own section, because this is just weird. Okay, so frame rate, and from the moment I started up the game, it didn't feel right. Movement was fine, but every time I moved the camera, there was almost a stutter feeling, so I dug in. And well, just take a look for yourself. The game is jumping between an almost locked 30 FPS and then dropping immediately to 20 and kind of repeating. Rarely does it fall in between, 24, 25, it just kind of jumps up and down between the two. So audio then, and for the most part it's fine with a few weird issues. The music's inoffensive enough, but I gotta say, they've attached themes to each location and they pretty much repeat, so they may start to grate towards the end game as you've listened to them for hours on end. Thankfully though, cutscenes and especially battles have some particularly epic moments. Sound effects then are 99% good, from that of winning a battle to sounds that suitably back up some of these epic moves you'll be pulling off. We even get I've got to say a good chunk of voice acting, mainly reserved for the opening of the game and then cutscenes from that point forward, but it's still nice to have, and for anyone that is curious, it is in Japanese only with English subtitles. Problems, I've got two weird ones. First, there's a jump mechanic in the game. Why, I have no idea, because I can't think of a single moment where I really had to use it as such. But the problem I've got with it is it uses the same annoying sound over and over and over again, and the quality of this particular recording just seems weirdly low compared to everything else. It was there though, and I have that personality where I kept on pressing it in the hope I'd hear something different. I'll give you a hint though, I never did, and trust me, I tried, and all I really achieved was the loss of a little sanity. Then the voice acting, while it is good, it's definitely out of sync, and it is noticeable, with the occasional delay between the action on screen happening and the audio playing. As I say, audio is not bad, and I know there's a day one patch coming, so hopefully it can at least just fix that sync issue. So the final verdict, and I've no doubt been tough on this one, and I'm sure it may upset some fans out there who are already typing on their keyboard in the comments below, but it's a case of Fairy Tail deserves a better game. This IP deserves more. There's a great core combat system in here though, there's some stunning cutscenes, some decent pacing, the characters as well, they absolutely hooked me, and they did make me want to check out the anime. Sadly though, it's the world they inhabit and what we can actually do with them that is the problem. Every mission here is just nearly identical, and a fast travel system that opens up instantly almost harms the game, because I said it before and I'll say it again, gameplay is this: go to job board, accept job, open map, select location, walk 5 to 10 steps to enemy, fight, click yes, return to base, repeat. Even the story arcs are this same thing, except they have some great cutscenes to soften that repetition blow. I didn't have a bad time with Fairy Tail, but as far as RPGs go, it's far from the best on the console, and it lacks a lot of the elements that make the genre so good. With games like Trails of Cold Steel, Trails of Mana, Xenoblade Chronicles, Octopath Traveler, I Am Setsuna, Lost Sphere, Tales of Vesperia, there's a lot of games I'd basically recommend before this relatively basic one, unless you are an absolute die-hard Fairy Tail fan. Today I'm giving Fairy Tail a slightly above average 6 out of 10. I know that's going to upset many, and no doubt huge fans may find a whole lot more in here that could push it to maybe a 7 because of the story and the throwbacks. But even then, if this was an IP I adored, I think I would still have that same disappointment in the gameplay loop. That's where this one truly stumbles for me, because the quest, that's the core of a JRPG, and this one, very few of them are memorable basically. There's the occasional one that is good, and the arcs are very good, and that's what just about pulls it away from being an average 5 out of 10. Thanks for watching, let me know what you think and if you will be adding this one to your collection. As always then, like a huge thank you to the patrons of the channel. We've had another one join, so thank you all so much. I appreciate you basically just going above and beyond, and it means a lot. Then if you are new here, hit subscribe, join our growing family, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.